Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football, Ole Miss Football, bold predictions heading into 2024. And Dill, for the Ole Miss fans that have been listening to the boys the last couple of weeks and months, you guys know this is one of our teams heading into 2024. It was a blast coming up with these bold predictions. Now, I think where I want to start, would love to hear from the Ole Miss fans in the comments section. These are some of my favorite episodes to do where you kind of believe in certain players, you believe in certain position groups. We all have the opportunity now to kind of call our shot heading into 2024. Would love to hear from you guys in the comments section. And if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. All the support that the Ole Miss fans have shown the boys, whether we're talking the recruiting trail, the transfer portal, preview in 2024, we appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And Dill, without further ado, let's get into one that I've been banging the table for the last 7 months since Jackson Dart announced he was coming back. Jackson Dart making it to New York City, Heisman finalist. Quite frankly, he's my pick to win the Heisman Trophy in this 2024 season. I look at a couple of different things. One, we know Jackson Dart is one of the most physically gifted quarterbacks that we see across the country. We saw that going back to the 2022 year, but he took a massive step in 2023. Now you look at all the things that are kind of the wind at his back, so to speak, heading into 2024. It's year 3 in this Lane Kiffin offense. You have arguably the best pass catcher room in the country surrounding you. You have a brilliant offensive mind in Lane Kiffin scheming this offense up. And if Jackson Dart takes another step, I think he's going to put up some absolutely incredible numbers in this Ole Miss offense in 2024.
That's one thing I think people kind of don't take enough into account is they were kind of banged up on the offensive side. He really didn't have a great stable of weapons. And when Trey Harris was on and healthy, obviously he's one of the better players in the country at that wideout spot. But aside from him, I don't think he had a ton of reliable targets. Now you obviously bring in Juice Wells. You have some young guys like Aiden Williams, Caden Lee, and then Deion Smith from the JUCO ranks. I think now you have a very full stable of wide receivers who can do a lot of different things. And I'm kind of like, if Jackson Dart can just make one more step in terms of like elevating that completion percentages, hopefully getting it closer to 70%, that's kind of the target, I think. If he's there, we know we can make plays. I just think, again, it's can you in big games against big teams be really, really steady and run that off?
So you say the big games, right? That's where Jackson Dart's going to win this Heisman. You know what I mean? Like Jackson Dart's going to put up some crazy numbers against a group of 5 teams on the schedule and the kind of lower level SEC programs. We know that. I mean, where you win the Heisman Trophy is playing your best football in the biggest games. They've improved the offensive line. I think that might be the biggest talking point going into 2024, where Ole Miss had some struggles last year. It was going up against the elite front sevens, right? Georgia, Alabama. With that offensive line getting significantly better, I think that helps Jackson Dart have better performances against those premier teams in the SEC. And I think one other thing you would say is you've seen him just take the steps where he needed to, right? Much better pushing the ball down the field. We know Lane Kiffin is going to scheme you up some explosive plays. You saw Jackson Dart not make all of those throws in 2022, got significantly better in 2023, got much better attack in the middle of the field as well. And there are all things that Jackson Dart's getting better as a football player, but man, this offense around him is also getting better. We feel pretty dang good about this prediction. And Dill, going to number 2 wide receivers, going for over 1,000 yards. I think you have some obvious answers to this, right? Trey Harris, I think you have him as a top 3 wide receiver in the country. Juice Wells, Dill, you go back 12 months. I said Juice Wells was the best wide receiver in the SEC heading into the 2023 season. You have 2 of the better wide receivers in the conference, in the country. Those are probably your 2 picks. Now, where I see this prediction getting a little bit hairy is if the ball gets a little bit more spread out than we think, right? Caden Prieskorn at the tight end spot, Daquan Wright, Jordan Watkins. I think these 2 wide receivers and Juice Wells and Trey Harris have the capability of going for 1,000 yards. I think the more the storyline is how much do the other pass catchers get involved in this offense?
Yeah, that kind of will be the question inherently, because I think without a doubt, if Trey Harris plays a healthy year, I don't see a world that it's probably that second guy, and whether him and Juice Wells can kind of get a connection going, or whether kind of like you said, where you see guys like Deion Smith emerge or Aiden Williams emerge, some of those younger, talented guys who, again, maybe haven't proved at the SEC level yet the way or Juice Wells has proved it, but guys who I think can make things happen. So that probably is where that prediction gets hard. It's just if you have a bunch of guys go for 500 plus.
So where I feel good about this, though, is you said it best. I mean, Trey Harris, one of the best wide receivers in the country. If he's healthy for 12 football games, he's going for over 1,000 yards. Where I see this prediction coming true is Juice Wells just provides such a different kind of pass catcher than Trey Harris. There are so many different ways you can get him the football, whether it's screens, whether it's swing passes, whether it's lining him up in the backfield. He's elite after the catch. He can work the middle of the field exceptionally well. So Trey Harris is your true wide receiver one on the boundary, where you're going to see safeties having to respect what he can do working down the field. I think that's going to open up this offense for a guy like Juice Wells to get so many different touches. And again, Lane Kiffin, he's the best in the business at kind of getting his playmakers the football where they excel. Because Trey Harris and Juice Wells have such different skill sets, I can see them both getting heavily involved in this Ole Miss offense. Going to number 3, our guy, Ulysses Bentley IV, going into his senior season. I feel like nobody wants to talk about him potentially being one of the best running backs in the country. I think he goes for over 1,000 yards. Quite frankly, and this is not a shot at Quinshon Judkins, one of the best running backs in the country heading into 2024. There's a strong argument that Ulysses Bentley was better than Quinshon Judkins in the 2023 season. And I think he fits a little bit more how Ole Miss wants to operate, where you're going to get your opportunities in space. Ulysses Bentley, guy that has the playmaking ability to hit the home run play every single time he touches the football. Lane Kiffin's going to give him more of those opportunities. You sign me up for Ulysses Bentley to wake up the SEC in 2024.
Yeah, no, I'm totally on board with this one. I just think Ulysses Bentley, again, Judkins had such a good year his freshman year. I feel like it was Judkins or bust, and that's all anyone wanted to talk about around this Ole Miss program. But again, when you're watching these games, I mean, Ulysses Bentley averaging almost 1.5 yards more than what Judkins was averaging per touch, and he was getting the ball. It's not like he had like 20 carries or something. He was really, really dynamic. He was making more big plays, and that was the one thing. I think, again, Judkins good running the ball, power in between the tackles, but when Ulysses Bentley gets out in space, the way Lane Kiffin wants to run with those pitches, he uses some of that other stuff. I mean, Ulysses Bentley, just you kind of said it, just might be better designed for that specific.
And I think Ulysses Bentley doesn't get enough credit for what he can do between the tackles either. Like, hey, he's not as big as Quinshon Judkins. He is more than serviceable running between the tackles as well. He runs much more physical than what it shows up on the scale. And so I think he's a guy that I think a lot of people see him as, I don't know if a scat back is the right word, but kind of that change of pace running back. I look at Ulysses Bentley and say, I have a ton of confidence that if you get him 150 to 200 touches in this season, he's going to be averaging 5+ yards a carry. He goes for over 1,000 yards, and just having more opportunity is going to lead this kid to have a massive year for Ole Miss in 2023. Now, though, I don't think any of these predictions on the offensive side of the football are that crazy, right? I think we're all expecting this Ole Miss offense to be one of the better units, not only in the SEC, but in the country. Why we are believers in Ole Miss is what they've done on the defensive side of the football, specifically in the front 7 on the defensive line. Our first bold prediction on the defensive side of the football, 2 pass rushers having 8+ sacks. Now you start playing around with who is it going to be. I'll kind of offer the obvious one. A healthy Princely Aiyuk is arguably the best pass rusher in the SEC heading into 2024. I mean, as a pure pass rusher, there's not many players that have the juice off the line of scrimmage combined with just such a deep tool bag of pass rush moves. I mean, this is a kid that just knows what he's doing when he's getting after the passer. A healthy Princely Aiyuk, I'm confident goes for 8+ sacks. Now the question is, who's going to be the other guy getting the 8+ sacks? Though I'll put you on the spot here. Who is your prediction, if you will, in terms of the other guy going for 8+ sacks in this season?
I think the obvious one to me is Suntrain Perkins. I thought, again, the way they were able to use him in terms of stunts and some of those twists they were using him, the way he can chase guys down, the way he can use that athleticism and speed to get to the quarterback. Again, I think guys like Jared Ivey, really, really good defensive ends, big, disruptive. He might be able to do it, but I don't know that he totally has the athleticism and the juice to exactly put that type of sack number up. It's a big number at the college level. So I like it, Suntrain Perkins, if they can use him like they did in that Alabama game where he was not necessarily just working one-on-one pass rush, but working into some twists, working with a very disruptive unit. And I think as guys around him get better, you bring in guys like Walter Nolan, obviously Princely U. I think that opens things up for him to kind of make some more of those plays that he was making himself.
Yeah, and Suntarian Perkins is one of those unique guys that I don't know if Ole Miss had a exact picture of how they wanted to use him as a freshman. And when you saw him get used in certain ways, I go back to that Alabama game where it's, some of those delayed blitzes where you're kind of spying the quarterback. And when that quarterback starts to move and you're going to see a pocket that's being really disruptive, you release him, you let him just go find ball, get ball. That's kind of where I think Perkins is operating the best, kind of like we saw Harold Perkins during his freshman year. I think they are extremely similar kind of defenders and athletes. If you have a better picture, and I think that's the job of this Ole Miss defensive coaching staff is, hey, we have one of the premier athletes on the defensive side of the football in the country. Now we got to get him in spots where he can excel. If they do that, he can certainly go for 8+ sacks. Walter Nolan's probably the other answer. I mean, J.J. Pegas is a guy that's more of a pocket collapser, disruptor, not necessarily a sack master. Walter Nolan can be one of those, difference makers from the inside of the defensive line. There's not that many of them in the sport of college football. Walter Nolan certainly has the ability to be one of those guys. Dill, my last prediction for this Ole Miss defense, let's talk about arguably my favorite defender on this Ole Miss team, Trey Amos. Talk about a kid that's getting overlooked. I think Trey Amos is an all-SEC player. Whether it's first team, whether it's second team, people are not giving enough respect to how good Trey Amos was for Alabama, where he played a lot more than people kind of give him credit for. I feel like they treat him as, all right, you were just kind of a reserve player for Alabama. Yeah, he didn't start because he was behind two cornerbacks that just went in the top 50 in the NFL draft. That being said, when he played, he was exceptional. And Dill, I look at Trey Amos being this Ole Miss cornerback one, taking away elite SEC defenders. I think he can be that for this Ole Miss program in 2024.
And he is one of those ones that I think is an ultra important kind of transfer move. I mean, obviously you want everybody to play good. But when I kind of look, with the amount they lost at that cornerback spot, and maybe even to an extent the way they played last year, where I don't think was quite as good as you probably would have wanted, I think Trey Amos, him having a big year is one of those like real keys to Ole Miss kind of making that next step being really good.
And you look at taking that next step in the SEC, you're going to see elite wide receiver ones. If you can have a cornerback that can take away a wide receiver one, like I think Trey Amos has the ability to, that's a huge storyline for Ole Miss. Now, while we're on the cornerback position, this isn't a bold prediction, more just some dudes talking some Ole Miss football. Chris Graves. I think Chris Graves is a super talented cornerback that, again, when he came out of high school, he was kind of playing around with, are you going to play cornerback? Are you going to play wide receiver? He transfers to Ole Miss really late in the offseason last year and kind of finds his way onto the football field at times later in the season. I think you're looking at a super high upside cornerback that, again, nobody's really talking about because he didn't play a ton in 2023. That's another cornerback that has some elite traits. If he can put it together going into year 3 of his college football career, which I kind of think he does because now he knows what position he's going to play. Keep an eye on my guy, Chris Graves as well. Dill, we'll close it out there. Fascinating program heading into 2024. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.